Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to my van down by the river. You know, my little videos have been talked about and featured on places like CNN, the London Guardian, various different publications and websites around the globe. And they all refer to me the same way. They call me conspiracy theorist Sage Wanderer. Conspiracy theorist Sage Wanderer says. But, I thought, well, shoot, if I'm a conspiracy theorist, what kind of conspiracy theorist would I be if I didn't offer you my opinion on who shot John F. Kennedy? Don, don, don. Now you're asking yourself, why isn't this a coffee talk? Why isn't this a coffee talk? Because I think I know who's responsible and who the major players were in the killing of John F. Kennedy. And yes, I believe there was a conspiracy behind it. I think that for a while now, for a few years, I've been fixed on this opinion, and it's only gotten stronger and more solidified and more defendable since the release of the JFK declassified documents that was such a story early on in Donald Trump's presidency, where he released these heavily redacted documents and fought with the deep state about the release of these documents. But I think it kind of proves my theory on who shot John F. Kennedy. So you kind of got to go back to this and look at this as a mystery. You know, this happened before I was born. And I was raised by, with, and around the greatest generation. And to them, this is the biggest mystery. This and what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, the Teamster leader that disappeared and left no body behind. So, you know, what happened to Jimmy Hoffa and who shot JFK? That was their big two mysteries, and Roswell. And so, as a young budding conspiracy theorist, this may be my first mystery that I tackled, and I worked on it in my whole life. I was a conspiracy theorist concerning the JFK assassination before Oliver Stone, before Oliver Stone made his JFK movie, starring Kevin Costner. So, back when this was, I started on this when only a handful of people didn't believe the story. You know, most people thought that Lee Harvey Oswald was out of his mind, and he had delusions of grandeur, and he shot the president to make himself famous and to be somebody. And, you know, they don't want to explain why Jack Ruby, a known Dallas gangster with connections to people like George Bush Sr., why would Jack Ruby go out of his way, give up his very lucrative and pretty happening life as a gangster to murder this guy if it wasn't a hit? So, if you're not familiar, you should probably go back and watch the movies and videos and all the great documentaries of all the various opinions. But once again, like many of my personal theories, this is an amalgamated theory. This is a theory made up of a patchwork quilt of pieces of multiple theories. And so I'd like to take a minute and roll it out for you. And it kind of goes like this. So to know the motives and all of the players, you have to first ask yourself, who were the Kennedy brothers? Well, old man Kennedy, Joseph Kennedy, he was nouveau rich. He earned his money rather recently during Prohibition, when he took his small sailing ship, small boat, around the Canadian border and picked up legal Canadian whiskey and took it illegally into the United States, violating Prohibition and selling it to the underworld speakeasies ran by the gangsters. And so, you know, Joseph Kennedy has a direct connection to the Mafia, because this is who he was selling his whiskey to. He didn't have a speakeasy. He didn't have a lemonade stand with Canadian Mist. He was picking this stuff up in Canada legally, purchasing it, illegally smuggling it into the United States and selling it to the Mafia, who would distribute it in their networks of underground nightclubs. So, he wanted something more for his boys, and he made sure they went to an Ivy League school, and Bobby and John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy, excuse me. Yeah, they were brought up very differently and very removed from the source of their wealth, which had been this massive amount of money he had made as a smuggler. And so many people believe, and I think it's been proven by researchers and conspiracy theorists, that John F. Kennedy was elected with the help of the Mafia, and that Joseph called in some favors and made some promises on behalf of the boys to the Mafia. Promises that were not kept, because whether you believe that Bobby Kennedy knew about his father's involvement with the Mafia and their role at getting his brother elected, and he decided to violate all of those promises intentionally and go after the Mafia as Attorney General of the United States, which he did pursue them. It's why they also made sure he got killed himself and didn't make it to the presidency, because they had a deal with Joseph. Get him to lay off, get the law enforcement to lay off when we make your boy president, and we'll help him get elected. You know, just don't screw us over. But Bobby did, either unknowingly because Joseph didn't tell him or try to control him, or maybe he didn't really realize it, or it was intentional and he was defying them. Now, so you're saying, Sage, you think the Mafia killed him? No, not really. I don't think so. Because here's the thing. If the Mafia were to kill a United States president, then the United States government would come down on the Mafia in such a way as it would never ever be the same again. They would dismantle it if they had to raze their cities to the ground, if they had to pound them with artillery into the ground. The industrial complex is not going to sign off on that. They had to have permission. You see, when Kennedy became president, he immediately, like Trump has done, he immediately made enemies of the deep state in the CIA through the little debacle known as the Bay of Pigs. Once again, if you don't know what this is, go watch the movie, but in a nutshell, the CIA sets up some of their clandestine underground attempt to try to oust Castro out of Cuba. And the revolution fails because JFK won't pull the trigger on air support and on United States troops and batteries of bombardment and artillery from the ocean to support their little invasion, and it fails, and some CIA guys get killed along with a whole lot of Cuban expatriates who were trying to retake Cuba. So that, in a nutshell, is how he got on the wrong side of the deep state. So the deep state and the Mafia are connected. We know this. It's always been this way. It's still this way. It was this way then. It was this way during the Reagan administration with the guns for drugs, the Fast and Furious, the Arkansas runway stories behind Bill Clinton. All of this is related to this deep state corruption working hand in hand with the Mafia. And so they reached out to their, people that were helping them, and they were helping each other and sharing information, sharing underworld rule of the United States with the CIA. And the CIA was angry, and the CIA gave the Mafia the permission. But they went, really, we need to try to get somebody in elected government to back us up, somebody who's got our back. We need to find somebody who wants to be president really, 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 really bad. They needed to corrupt the second in command. They needed to get the vice president on board. Who signed off on the killing of John F. Kennedy? None other than one of my favorite Texans, but unfortunately, I think he's guilty here. Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. I don't think LBJ hatched the plan. I think LBJ could have stopped the plan. But I think it went right up the chain until it got to LBJ, and he signed off on the dotted line because Lyndon Baines Johnson wanted to be president. That the motive for the killing of John F. Kennedy is one of the oldest motives in the world. You want him out of the job you'd like to have. You want to get promoted, so you kill the person that's standing in your way. It's as old as time itself. Who killed JFK? The Mafia, the deep state, and the Vice President of the United States working together. Some say, like, okay, so in the Mafia, if you want to whack somebody, 3-4 people want to whack them, they don't get one guy to whack them because then the other 3 guys will testify against him if they get caught. So all 4 of them put a bullet into him. Even if he was already dead when the first guy killed him, they all come along and they shoot him. You've seen it in gangster movies, right? So this is what they did with the deep state and the Mafia. So that one wouldn't turn on the other. There were 3 shooters. There were 3 angles. Triangulation. Remember, I'm a son of the old Marine drill instructor. I have read all of the government methods of killing people, and triangulation of fire is one of the most important methods used. It just ensures the annihilation of your enemy if you attack them from 3 different directions, and if the shooting comes from 3 different angles. Why 3? Because you can shoot and not be pointing at each other. Think about it. Think the way a triangle is shaped. Each person can shoot to the center without shooting the other person. Can't do that in a square. Okay. So, triangulation of fire was used, and there were both Mafia hitmen and CIA assets. Whether to what degree Lee Harvey Oswald actually played in this, I think he figured it out in those moments before his death when he told all of the reporters trying to get a word from him. He said, "I'm a patsy. I'm a patsy." They set him up. How they set him up? Well, that's a study in and of itself, but he was definitely set up. Was he clean? Probably not. He was one of them. But he didn't think he was killing the president that day. That's what I think. And Jack Ruby, the Mafia hitman, owner of the Mafia strip club in Dallas, offs him. George Bush was involved in this. President Ford was involved in this. Before he was president, he was over the investigative body that looked into this and declared that it was a single shooter and that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. All of our presidents, up until Obama, I think, were payoffs to people who were involved in the conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, because that's a little different story, but they were the same motivations to go after him as well. So tell me what you think in the comment section. Did I get it right? LBJ killed JFK. He just didn't pull the trigger. Tell me what you think in the comment section.